Okay, so we are continuing Pirke Mishnah Zayin, Pirke Avoth, 5th chapter, Mishnah number 7. We said the 7 things that define a Chacham as opposed to Golem, who's incomplete or imperfect. Says Rambam, we read them last week quickly, and we're going to try to do the Rambam. So says Rambam, V'amar hena, what our Mishnah is saying, Sha'chacham yihyu lo elu sheva ma'alot. Chacham has these 7 qualities with him. Ve'em ikarim gedolim. Obviously, whenever we talk about in such a term, we give a number, that means there are 7, areas. There are 7 master keys. It's not only, in one situation. These are patterns that repeat themselves in many different facets throughout our life. So he says, that's what Rambam says, them ikarim gedolim. They are very important foundations. There are the 7 foundations that carry Chacham. And because of this, we must pay attention to them. Because through them, it's possible. It's very interesting. Gemara means what?
Study, no?
Yeah, study at depth. Limud, intercepts, to introspect. That's what Gemara is. Limud, study v'amasa, and eventually action. First you think about it. You try to get the depth of it. It seems from Rambam. Then, finally you saw the different areas. When does it apply? When doesn't it apply? How does it fit with the other thing? This and that. That's Gemara. That's the depth. That's getting perspective. And then limud. So now you got it. You learned it, and then you will have to implement it into maaseh, into action. Harba mehem hen ma'alot hamidot. Now 4 of them is in the area of midot, is in the area of conduct that we have towards others, behavior that we have towards the others, that is our attitudes in our relationships. And the other 2, I'm guessing, is going to be the attitude towards the study and self-growth. Let's see. Vehu. Now the 4 is she'enu medaber lifnei mi shegadol mimenu b'chokhmah. He doesn't speak before somebody who's greater than him. Now that is a quality. That is a quality in learning also. That helps him become chacham, because he knows. Look, here I have more to learn than I have to contribute to others. That's the situation is such. There's someone smarter than me here. So someone is smarter than me. That means I'm going to learn. So that contributes to learning. But Rambam says the motive starts from derech eretz. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. The motive is that you gotta have that much respect. He's greater than you, so you shouldn't speak before him. Does not interrupt another. That's number 2. Gives him a chance to finish his words. And he should not be haughty. He should not try to show off something that he doesn't know. If he doesn't know something, he should have the honesty, but Rambam says the derech eretz. He should have the derech eretz to say, you know what? I don't know. I haven't seen. Which tells us anything he hasn't heard, he's comfortable admitting that I haven't heard it. And he should not be stubborn for the sake of his stubbornness. Sometimes a person believes in something, so you see sometimes someone believes in something, but he just doesn't have the personality to stand for his principles. Obviously, that's something that we have seen in Pirke Avoth itself. One should have that strength of character. But to be stubborn just for the sake of stubbornness. You see that what you're being told is true. You see the point you are making is not correct. It has certain shortcomings. So don't be stubborn and not accept. When one hears something that is the truth, that he hears it to be the truth, he should admit. So now it happens a lot of times that he has what to combat. He has what to say to combat the point that is being presented. However, if you don't believe it to be true anymore, I was making a point. So the one who's arguing with me makes a point, and I see he is right, and my point was mistaken. Now I have room to continue the argument because there are other arguments. But I know those arguments don't hold water. He may not know. I know. Shouldn't say that. Should I say Rav Shlomo Zalman, when he went, he was a very, very young man. When he went to apply for a job as a Rebbe in Yeshiva Kol Torah, so he gave the shiur that he had, and he made a point. One of the students asked a question on what he was presenting, and so now here is a young man who's prepared this shiur, and you have all the Rosh Yeshiva seeing how he does. So he says, "You're right, I don't know. You're right, I don't know." So afterwards, they come and ask him, you really hadn't thought of that point that this student brought up? So no, I had 3 answers. So how come he didn't say it? I hadn't worked on any of them enough to be convinced that they're correct answers. I had 3 possible answers, but I haven't worked at them. I'm not convinced that there are correct answers yet. So he felt the midah of emet, which our Mishnah says is one of the midot of Chacham, prevented him from presenting those as an answer. Right? And that's what Rambam is saying. Sometimes a person may be smart enough, brilliant enough to further an argument, but it doesn't mean that he believes it. Right? Not that this is a very good example, but obviously Rabbi Meir was not a person to say something that he didn't believe. But Gemara in Eruvin says that halacha follows Rabbi Meir a lot of times, but sometimes it doesn't, right? Because halacha, kechachamim against Rabbi Meir. So he says, Galoi yadua, the truth of the matter is that halacha should have followed him more. However, shelo yardu chaverav lesof da'ato. He was so much more brilliant than all his contemporaries that they couldn't understand him, they couldn't follow him. So that's why it worked against him. Because they said, look, you could trick us into making a point and we wouldn't know to correct you. You're so much smarter than us that you really could pull the wool over our eyes and we won't notice. And Rabbi Meir would never do it. But Chachamim felt, we can't, since we are not on the same level argument as you, we cannot sort of take you into account. It's like the Shela David, Rav David Kaliner, he says that the halacha, that Torah says, we take a vote, the way Sanhedrin was, right? Sanhedrin was, so there's a halachic question, whatever it is, somebody's guilty or not, so they take a vote of the members of Sanhedrin. And acharei rabim lehatot, there's a midoraita commandment in Torah det Taryag mitzvot that we must follow the opinion of majority. So he says that's only if both sides had a chance to hear themselves. Now the truth of the matter is, like sometimes we see, like nowadays, poskim of nowadays. So what's the halacha? Like, look, I looked in Mishnah Berurah, I looked in Kaf HaChaim, and I looked in Haravad Yosef, and most opinions follow this. And we may say, okay, we follow most opinions. Now, it just may be a safe bet, and that's why we do it. But the halacha of Acharei Rabim doesn't apply there. Acharei Rabim is when the two sides had a chance to present to each other. Let me hear your position, let you hear my position. After we hear both positions, everybody has a chance to take all positions into consideration, and then finally he is ready to see, what position I think is the correct one. Then Torah says you must follow the majority opinion. If they never had a chance to talk to each other, right? So then you don't have that halacha. So it's a little bit similar to that. Chachamim felt that they didn't have a chance to talk to Rabbi Meir because Rabbi Meir was so much more brilliant. He was way further ahead of them. So halacha wasn't like it. They couldn't play at the same level as Rabbi Meir did. Rabbi Meir Balanes, correct. Rabbi Meir Balanes. Sotam Rabbi Meir in Mishnah. So at any rate, says Rambam that's what he's saying. One should not further arguments to uphold his position if he himself is not convinced of his position's truth, or I should say, he himself saw that his position is not correct. Lo yirtze la'asoto, v'zo omro modeh al ha'emet.
Even if it's pilpul, what if it's just pilpul?
See, pilpul doesn't mean not truth. Pilpul still has to be truth. Right? It's just that it's another brand of Torah. It's another brand of Torah that goes on, back and forth analytical concepts. Now, pilpul doesn't mean that I am saying something that I am convinced is not true, unless you make your point. Right? Gemara says a position, Rishonim tell us, Gemara says a position, says an answer that is quite clear, they didn't believe it. So why did they say it? Says Rashi, mitoch shetarach ve'omed al buya. They don't want to give you the final answer in the beginning because you may not see all the thought process that went into it, so you'll miss something. If you see why this is wrong, finally we get to the right answer, so you saw where the fault lies with the other incorrect paths. That's why they didn't give you the correct path right in the beginning. Because, somebody else may see the not correct path and he's not smart enough to see why it's incorrect. So they chose to give you, even though, the way Rishonim say, the way Rashi says it, it's really beneath any of the Amoraim. None of the Amoraim would have made that mistake. It's just a tool for them to clarify. So you may have that. You may start saying, you know what, me and you, the Muskar Rishon, looking at the surface, we would say this. But we see it's not true. Why is it not true? You may start something like that, just to make a point. But to say something that I know it's not true for the sake that, I just could say something, obviously, that offends the truth of Torah. The truth of Torah. It's something I'm not going to go through the whole conversation, but there is a Teshuvah Rabbi Yosef wrote probably 50 years ago. I don't remember the exact year, but I was learning it. So he says, there's a question that was asked him, and he gives the answer. And then he says, for different reasons, that's the answer. And then he says, but the truth of the matter is, there is a more fundamental reason why it should be the way I'm saying. The foundation of halacha goes the way I say it, right? Because if you understand the Gemara correctly, you see that the whole question doesn't. And he brings a Rosh who says how the Gemara says, and he says, but the problem is that what the Rosh says, it could be misused. Some people who are looking for excuses could abuse it and take it out of context. So he says, originally I thought, Asur lo amro b'fnei ha'ma'aretz. I'm not going to write this reason. I answered the question enough. I answered the question, why should I write this reason? But then, he says, his sense of emet, his sense of truth was offended. He said, then I thought about it and I decided, Torat emet ketiv. I must be truthful. And if I'm not giving you the true reason here, I'm not being truthful. Even though he answered the halacha correctly. But if he doesn't fully give you the picture why the halacha is like, he says, I was uncomfortable writing it, but then I decided writing is the correct thing. So, there is something about truth. It really had such an impact on me. We think it's just the job is, but there's a Torat emet ketiv, says Rabbi Yosef. It's the truth. And how could we abuse and corrupt that truth, chas v'shalom. So these are the four that have to do with conduct and derech eretz. Then there is another three, says Rambam, that's sichliyotem, that have to do with our progress in our mental and understanding prowess. That has to do with one's knowledge, not necessarily conduct. How is those three? So kishiyat'ehu mat'eh b'mlechet hamat'eh lo yibahel ve'yishaer mesupar be'emet. When somebody tries to corrupt him, he should not be confused and in a doubt. Right away, he should zero in. He should zero in where is the unclear area and clarify it. He should never be scared. Chacham should never be. Now, this obviously works both for oneself and for another. He should never be scared, or the word of the Mishnah is nivhal, rushed. He should be rushed to give an answer and get it over with. He should make sure, in my own mind more than anybody else, it's clear. It makes sense. It is glatt, as they say. It's smooth and clear. Which our Mishnah said, don't be rushed to answer. And that happens, says Rambam, with the sharpness of understanding and the clarity of knowing something, to the one who's asking a question, to be able to present the difference why the question is not a question. Number two, the questions that he asks, questions should be to the point. Questions should do with the subject at hand. Not that he has a certain question, certain thing, and now he's going to somehow connect it this and no. It should be that he's going to clarify, is going to help, but it's a true point on the subject being discussed. Lo yevakesh mofet limudi bechokmat hateva. He should not ask for mofet limudi, for patterns of thinking bechokmat hateva, when they are talking about biology. It's a different subject matter. ולא טענה טבעית בחוכמת הלימודית כיוצא בזה. ואם יהיהו הנשאל, now if he is the one whom the question is being directed to, גם כן יענה מעניין השאלה. He should answer to the question. He should not find some other thing to bring in. אם ישאל בעניינים שבטבעם מופת, יענה מעניין השואל במופת. If he needs a proof, so he should bring a proof. According to whatever, and it must be the answer given, it seems from Rambam here, to the level of understanding of the one who asked the question. Sometimes, and that's, those who, great speakers have this ability to be able to give the same answer to different people with different way of understanding, or even different language, or different way of understanding, different way of relating it, different way of articulating it. Right? Sometimes the message is the same, but the way it's said, it seems totally different. So you're able to connect to your audience. So the Rambam seems to say that's part of it. Isn't that very interesting? He says part of Meshiv le'inyan, he answers pointedly to the subject at hand, has to do with talk at a level that your audience could hear. ועוד לא יישאר ממנו סיבה חומרית וניתן סיבה סורית. Okay, לא יישאר סיבה סורית וניתן סיבה חומרית. If it's a practical thing, don't go into a theoretical field, and if it's theoretical, don't confuse it with practical. אלא ישיב מצד התכלית. He has to be to the point. וזו אומרו שואל כעניין ומשיב כהלכה, which means שואל כעניין, the question is on the subject, ומשיב כהלכה, and the answers are true. וזה לא יהיה אלא אחר חוכמה יתרה. And Rambam says, this ability to truly be to the point, he says, comes after chachma yetera, a lot of thought, a lot of practice. והמעלה השלישית שיסדר תלמודו. מעלה השלישית, the third one is to have a certain organization, order of presenting things. A lot of times, I want to present something, and it makes all the difference in the world. What is said first, what is said second, what order. So in your mind, you have a certain way of, and think about it and say how he presents, how the flow, because it's much easier when a person worked on something, so he knows all the ins and outs. Doesn't make a difference to him whatever, but the one who hears it for the first time obviously makes all the difference. So in his mind, one has to truly learn, where did it all start? What is a good way to do it? It takes some time, obviously, and time is the big need nowadays. But that's the important part that Rambam says is one of the things that make you chacham. So what should come first? What should come later? This is a very, very helpful strategy in studying the order. What comes first? What comes second? Which is what the Mishnah said, Omer al Rishon Rishon, Val Achron Achron. That there has to be what comes first and what comes last.
You want to finish it?
We finished.
There was a sentence, no? ואלו כולם הם בגולם באחד?
ואלו כולם הם גולם, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. ואלו כולם הם בגולם בהפך. And all these 7 patterns, you have the opposite of it in a golem, in a not fully formed personality. מפני שהוא בלתי שלם, like Rambam said, because he lacks perfection, that person. כמו שבאנו ולא הגיע לזאת המענו. So he hasn't reached this level, which again is a certain level of perfection. Thank you very much.